German planes are flying over the desert, they see only harmless supply trucks parked in the sand. But what they don't know is, those trucks were actually British tanks in disguise. Using canvas magic, the British completely fooled Rommel before the Battle of El Alamein. This is the insane WW2 trick that changed history, and almost nobody talks about it. Hey everyone, welcome back to WW2 Impact, the place where we uncover the hidden stories that actually decided the fate of World War II. Imagine standing in the middle of the endless North African desert in late 1942. The sun is beating down like a hammer. German reconnaissance planes are circling high above, their cameras clicking away. Below them, everything looks completely normal, just a bunch of ordinary supply trucks parked in the open sand. Nothing special. Nothing threatening. But what those pilots and their observers didn't know was that they were staring straight at one of the most brilliant deceptions in modern military history. Those harmless supply trucks were actually British tanks in disguise. And today on WW2 Impact, we're going to pull back the curtain on the incredible true story of how a handful of artists, engineers, and one eccentric stage magician pulled off a visual trick so powerful it helped turn the entire tide of the war in North Africa. This isn't Hollywood fiction. This is real battlefield magic that fooled one of the greatest generals of the war, Rommel himself. If you love stories about clever tactics, impossible odds, and moments where brains beat bullets, you're in the right place. Stick around till the end because the final twist will blow your mind. Hit that like button right now if you're ready for this, and make sure you're subscribed to WW2 Impact so you never miss these deep dives. Let's jump in. The Western Desert Campaign was unlike any other theater in World War II. From the Libyan coast all the way into Egypt, the battlefield was a flat, merciless ocean of sand and rock. There were no forests to hide in. No hills or valleys to conceal your movements. No cities or villages to blend into. It was like fighting on a giant open table under a blazing spotlight. Both sides knew one simple truth: whoever was seen first usually got destroyed first. German and Italian air reconnaissance had become terrifyingly effective. Their high-flying planes could spot individual vehicles from thousands of feet up. Their photo interpreters were experts at reading shadows, track marks, and even heat signatures. Once your tanks were spotted from the air, artillery or dive bombers would rain down within hours. Surprise attacks, especially big ones involving hundreds of armored vehicles, had become almost impossible. British commanders learned this the hard way in earlier battles like Operation Crusader in 1941. They paid a terrible price in lives and equipment because the enemy always seemed to know exactly where they were going. Rommel, the legendary Desert Fox, built his reputation on exactly this kind of rapid response and perfect intelligence. He could anticipate British moves before they even began. The desert stripped away every advantage that European warfare normally provided. No cover. No concealment. Just open ground and constant observation. Standard camouflage nets helped a little if your vehicle stayed perfectly still, but they took hours to set up, offered no protection against low-level flights, and still left telltale shadows and track marks that screamed tank to any trained observer. Even if you managed to hide a tank, you couldn't easily transform it into something else. You couldn't make an entire armored division disappear and reappear somewhere else looking completely innocent. Or at least, that's what everyone believed until a very special group of people decided to think differently. Enter the man at the heart of this story, Jasper Maskelyne. Maskelyne came from a family where illusion wasn't just a hobby, it was a profession. His grandfather had been one of the most famous stage magicians in Victorian Britain. Jasper himself had performed in London's West End and built a reputation for elaborate theatrical tricks before the war. When World War II broke out, he joined the Royal Engineers and eventually found himself in Cairo. He quickly became a nuisance to the British military high command. Why? Because he kept insisting, loudly and correctly, that the same skills used to fool theater audiences could be scaled up and used to fool enemy armies on an industrial level. After some persistence, he was assigned to a special camouflage development unit south of Cairo at Helwan. There, he teamed up with artists, architects, scene painters, structural engineers, and a brilliant industrial designer named John Hutton. Their mission was simple but revolutionary: solve the desert's visibility problem once and for all. The solution they created was pure genius, two interlocking devices that worked together like a perfectly choreographed magic act. The first device was called the Sunshield. At first glance, it looked almost too simple to work. It was a lightweight, collapsible frame made from tubular steel and wooden struts that could be fitted over a standard British cruiser or infantry tank. Over this frame they stretched a specially painted canvas skin designed to look exactly like the body of a 3-ton supply lorry when viewed from the air. The whole thing weighed only about 200 kilograms. A crew of 4 could put it on in roughly 20 minutes. Once fitted, a deadly Crusader or Valentine tank magically transformed into what appeared to be a completely ordinary, soft-skin supply vehicle. But the real brilliance wasn't just the shape. The raised canvas created an artificial shadow underneath that perfectly matched the shadow a real lorry would cast under North African sunlight angles. From 3,000 meters up, a photo interpreter would see a lorry-shaped object casting a lorry-shaped shadow. The tank underneath was optically erased. The second device was equally clever and perfectly symmetrical. They created a false structure that could be fitted onto real supply lorries, completely changing their silhouette so they looked like tanks from the air. If your tanks now looked like lorries, then your lorries had to look like tanks. The effect was stunning. When German observers photographed an area from above, they would count what appeared to be a normal mixed force of armor and supply vehicles. The numbers matched what they had seen the day before. Nothing looked out of place. Nothing raised suspicion. In reality, an entire armored formation was being quietly moved forward piece by piece. Tanks wearing sunshields rolled into position looking like innocent lorries. Real lorries wearing the fake tank disguises moved back to fill the gaps. The visual footprint in the sky stayed exactly the same, but the actual fighting power on the ground had completely shifted. Production of these devices was done mostly in workshops in Cairo and Alexandria using local Egyptian Hessian canvas and steel tubing. This kept supply lines from Britain free for more urgent cargo and made repairs easy in the field. Estimates suggest around 300 to 500 complete Sunshield sets were made and issued to the 8th Army between mid-1941 and autumn 1942, with similar numbers of the lorry-to-tank disguise units. Now let's talk about the moment these devices proved their worth. The preparation for Operation Lightfoot, the opening phase of the Second Battle of El Alamein in October 1942. General Bernard Montgomery had taken command of an exhausted army. He needed to concentrate a massive armored force, the bulk of X-Corps with 3 full armored divisions, in the northern sector of the front, right in front of the main German defenses. Doing this on open desert under constant enemy air reconnaissance should have been impossible. But Montgomery had a secret weapon, a massive deception operation codenamed Bertram. Over 3 weeks in October 1942, the 8th Army put on an industrial-scale theatrical performance unlike anything seen before. In the southern sector, they built hundreds of dummy vehicles, wooden frames covered in canvas that looked exactly like real lorries and tanks from the air. They even created fake pipelines, fake supply dumps, and fake vehicle parks. Everything was designed to convince the Germans that the main British attack would come in the south, and that it was still weeks away. Meanwhile, in the north, the Royal armor moved forward wearing sunshields. They arrived looking like supply parks. German reconnaissance planes dutifully photographed what they believed were just more lorries. The armored divisions stayed hidden in plain sight. Some German photo interpreters later admitted they noticed subtle oddities in the northern images, shadows that seemed a little too dense or falling at slightly wrong angles. But those reports were dismissed because the bigger intelligence picture pointed strongly to the south. When the massive artillery barrage opened on the night of October 23, 1942, nearly 900 guns firing simultaneously along a 60-kilometer front, the Germans were caught off balance. The weight of British armor in the north was greater than they had expected, and it came from positions they had logged as harmless supply areas. The surprise wasn't total, but it was real. And it was enough. What made the British approach so different from everyone else's? The Germans were masters of traditional camouflage, disruptive painting, using the desert's natural folds, moving at night. Their doctrine was about hiding. The British approach was about impersonation. They didn't just hide tanks, they made them become something else entirely. That conceptual leap is what made Operation Bertram work. Even the Americans, who arrived later and initially doubted such elaborate tricks, eventually incorporated elements of this thinking into their own deception plans, including parts of the massive Operation Fortitude that protected the D-Day landings. The psychological effect on the German side was enormous. After the battle, when they realized they had been staring at an entire armored division disguised as a lorry park, it planted seeds of doubt that lasted for the rest of the war. Once an enemy knows you can change what something looks like from the air, they start questioning every photograph, every report. That doubt slows down decisions and creates hesitation, sometimes more powerful than extra tanks. Surviving examples of these sunshields are extremely rare today. The canvas and wood construction didn't last long in the harsh desert conditions, and damaged units were simply discarded rather than preserved. You can see partial reconstructions at the Imperial War Museum in London and related documentation at the Bovington Tank Museum. But the clearest evidence of how well they worked is in the original German reconnaissance photos themselves, images that, once you know the secret, reveal the trick in reverse. So let's return one last time to that desert track southwest of Alamein in November 1942. A German reconnaissance plane banks in the morning light. The observer does his job exactly as trained. He sees lorries. He logs lorries. He files his report. He sees what he expects to see. That is the deepest lesson of this entire story. The most powerful weapon on certain battlefields isn't firepower, speed, or armor. It's the patient, disciplined manipulation of what the enemy believes to be true. The Sunshield program didn't win the Battle of El Alamein by itself. Montgomery's meticulous planning, growing material superiority, the breaking of Axis supply lines by the Royal Navy and Air Forces from Malta, and the cumulative exhaustion of Rommel's Afrika Korps all played huge roles. But here is what is undeniably true: on the night of October 23, 1942, when those 900 guns opened fire, the armor that advanced behind that barrage included formations the Germans had not correctly located and in strengths they had not correctly estimated. The surprise was purchased, in large part, by 3 weeks of meticulous, theatrical, industrial-scale impersonation. Rommel, returning from sick leave in Germany, later wrote that the British attack came with a weight and coordination he had not anticipated. He had excellent intelligence. He had skilled observers. Yet he never fully considered that what they were looking at was a magic trick designed by a stage magician, built from canvas and steel tubing in workshops along the Nile, operated by soldiers who spent their nights dressing tanks up as lorries and lorries up as tanks in the dark desert. It is one of the peculiar truths of warfare that its most decisive moments are sometimes its least visible ones. The thing that changes everything isn't always the shell that lands, it's the shell that was never fired because the target was standing in plain sight, looking for all the world like a simple supply park, while everything that actually mattered was hiding somewhere else entirely. The trick worked. The guns opened up. And the desert was no longer empty. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the incredible story of the Sunshield deception and how a magician's mind helped win one of World War II's most critical battles. If this story blew your mind, do me a huge favor, smash that like button, leave a comment with your favorite WW2 deception story, and subscribe to WW2 Impact with notifications turned on. We're uploading fresh hidden stories from the war every single week, and your support genuinely helps us keep bringing these deep, detailed videos to you. Thanks for watching WW2 Impact. I'll see you in the next one, where we uncover another secret that shaped history. Stay curious, stay sharp, and remember, sometimes the greatest weapons in war aren't made of steel, they're made of imagination.